All right, we're going to take a deeper look at the early vertical forearm. Really, since the advent of the front crawl, coaches and swimmers alike have been looking for ways to improve its efficiency. But as we've come to learn, early vertical forearm, or EVF, isn't just about freestyle. In fact, we use it in every single stroke. And it can be a huge advantage of being able to execute that early vertical forearm well because we use it in every stroke. It'll make you better at every stroke. If you get good at early vertical forearm in one stroke, it's going to translate over and make you better at pulling in every single stroke. Getting into this early vertical forearm allows us to engage more muscles. It allows us to engage our delts, our triceps, our lats, our pecs, and really helps us develop a great sense of power in our pull, rather than a pull where maybe we're waiting to get to that until later in our pull phase, right? And the way that I like to think about it is, if we talk about needing to develop power in our pull phase or needing to pull strongly, I like to think about trying to climb over a wall. I'm not going to climb over the wall with my arms straight out here. There's not a lot of power. It's very, very difficult. I'm going to climb over that wall here. I'm going to keep my arms in my power phase. And that's what early vertical forearm helps us do. It helps us keep our stroke where we're the strongest in our body. And not having great EVF, not only is it inefficient or maybe not maximal in terms of developing a great pull or propulsion phase of our stroke, it can also potentially lead to injury as we can put our arm out of place and have bad technique. The early vertical forearm starts with the catch, and I know that a lot of people hear the coaches talk about the catch, and it's different kind of from every coach and every group and every kind of phase of your stroke, but really all we're talking about when we're talking about the catch is getting our arm upon that recovery, whether it's coming from breaststroke, butterfly, freestyle, or backstroke, getting that arm set to initiate that next pull. And when we set the catch, we want to make sure that a couple things are going on. We want to make sure that we have happy shoulders. So here I have sad shoulders. My elbow pits are facing up. My shoulders are kind of tense. And if I started to pull, it would be very hard to actually get my elbow up and my forearm vertical. A happy shoulder, I'm going to shrug those shoulders up. I'm not necessarily pinching them way up here. I'm just going to turn them up so that my elbows can be here, and so that when I pull into that position, I can get into an early vertical forearm, right? And so that's kind of where I want my catch position. And my shoulder is happy shoulder, my arm is relaxed, and kind of my wrists and my fingers are slightly pointing down. Essentially, this is our catch position, and we're going to use it here in freestyle. It's a little bit wider in breaststroke and butterfly, but it's the same thing. It's the same thing, just out a little bit wider. And in backstroke, it's over our head, but it's the same general position. And then once you have that catch position set, it's really just a matter of getting used to pulling those fingertips until they're directly under our elbow. That's the first motion that we want to have. It's the first motion that we have in breaststroke. It's the first motion that we have in butterfly. It's the first motion that we have in freestyle. And maybe I'm not pulling my fingertips in towards my body in backstroke, but it's that first motion in backstroke. I'm pulling my fingertips down until they're directly under my elbow. It's just in a different plane in backstroke. And it's called early vertical forearm because our goal is to get to it as early as possible in our stroke. That being because then we're going to hold that wall of water here and we're going to pull our body past it. Right? If we wait till here, we've lost a lot of that water. We've lost a lot of that body positioning. We've lost a lot of that potential streamline positioning. So we're trying to get to that vertical forearm position as early as possible. And then ultimately we're trying to hold that position until we're ready to sweep out into the recovery. In freestyle we sweep that out, arm straight behind us. In butterfly we sweep it out to the side a little bit. In breaststroke we sweep in and come forward. And in backstroke, kind of the opposite of freestyle, we sweep that arm down towards our hip. But we're trying to hold that EVF position until we get to the sweep phase. And when executed well, the early vertical forearm is really a thing of beauty, and I love watching swimmers who excel at it. Some of the things we can do in the pool, I really like, when I'm working on early vertical forearm is putting on a snorkel, so that way I can kind of watch myself a little bit, because that's one of the hard things, is being able to see, is my arm actually getting to an early vertical forearm position. If you put that snorkel on, and you don't necessarily need to breathe, you can kind of take a peek and make sure you get in an early vertical forearm. And specifically working on it when you're doing some single arm work and freestyle backstroke butterfly. Don't do a lot of single arm work and breaststroke, but you can. So that way you're really isolating one arm at a time, really focusing on setting your catch, and then pulling those fingertips until they're directly under your elbow. And another way to work on it is in that windshield wiper skull, right? As you're sweeping those hands in, thinking about trying to sweep them in directly under your elbow so you can get a sense of that position. And then how far can you extend that windshield wiper position out in front of your body, right? Because again, we want to get that early vertical forearm. We don't want to wait till it's in line with our shoulder. A big thing is just making sure that when you're working on it, telling your coach to keep an eye on it and say, hey coach, I'm really working on my early vertical forearm here, because again, it's really hard to feel, it's really hard to see, and if you don't have a great early vertical forearm now, it's going to feel like such a drastically different stroke that you may not actually be doing enough to get to your early vertical forearm. So I think that making sure that when you're specifically working on early vertical forearm, you should make sure you're communicating with your coach and letting coach know, hey, keep an eye out, because I really want to make sure I'm improving this skill. And outside of the water, I think just improving general shoulder mobility is going to help you get to that early vertical forearm quicker, right? I think that's the biggest inhibitor in terms of being able to get to early vertical forearm as soon as possible in that stroke cycle. And some of the things we do, right, doing some of those goal posts where we're kind of extending up in a streamline, field goal to soccer goal, really working on that full shoulder rotation. We can also kind of add the puncher variation, and really just making sure that you can get that full range of motion in your shoulders. You can twist that elbow and get those fingertips directly under your elbow while keeping your shoulder in line. And then, trying to stretch that forward. Those are kind of the best ways to really make sure that you're improving shoulder mobility in a way that's safe and responsible, and not necessarily having over flexibility, because that can cause injury too. Ultimately, right, a lot of science, a lot of coaches have gone in and said, early vertical forearm is probably a very efficient way to swim our strokes, in terms of developing and sustaining propulsion through a stroke cycle. But it's not the only way, and we see in events like the 1500 meter freestyle, we see these elite swimmers, at least towards the end of the race, switching to a completely straight arm freestyle. And the question becomes, is the straight arm freestyle pulling more water? Is it developing more power? Why is it only towards the end of the race? Is it something that is potentially sustainable in the long run? Or is the benefit coming actually from that straight arm recovery, being able to drive that forward momentum further and faster over the water? I think these are things to consider while you're working on your early vertical forearm, but while you're executing some race strategies. Play around with it, see what feels right, feels natural. Have your coach time you, have your coach time specific parts of your races, and see, what works best. Maybe early vertical forearm is something that's great for longer races, or great in certain parts of races, but maybe there's another way out there, right? Have we found it all? I don't know. I don't think so.